In this slidecast, we're going to look at customer segments. Customer segments is the building block at the very right-hand side of the business model canvas. And the entire canvas is geared towards creating value for the customer. What's a customer segment? Basically, it's the group of people, users, or organizations you're creating value for. It's whose problems you're helping solve or needs you're helping satisfy. Now, traditionally, we describe customer segments with demographics, psychographics, and their behavior. We're going to add something else to this. We're going to add the jobs to be done concept. What are customers trying to get done in their work and their lives? So we're not just going to ask who our customers are. We're also going to ask what jobs are they trying to get done? What's this jobs to be done concept? It's a concept that was framed by two groups. The first one around Harvard professor Clayton Christensen. He says, we hire products to do things for us. In a famous talk, he explains why customers hire milkshakes. They hire milkshakes to help them get a job done. And it turns out it's to kill the time during a long and boring ride to work, not just to fill them up. The other group is around Tony Ulwick, founder of the consulting company Strategind. He says we'll get much better results if we focus on what customers are trying to get done, what jobs they're trying to get done. So let's define the job to be done concept. It's basically a fundamental problem customers hope to address or a need that they hope to satisfy. It's what customers hire a product or service to do for them. Now, why does this all matter? We'll briefly look at a very simple example, wealth management services. This is the service that banks offer to their wealthy customers. So, their customer segment would be high net worth individuals, people or families with more than $1 million of investable assets, and they offer them wealth management services. But people might look the same. If we ask what jobs they're trying to get done, maybe the picture looks very different. One group might be focusing on retiring very early, and the other group might be focusing on having an impact with the money that they earned. The consequences for the business model is obviously very important because you will have very different value propositions for these different customer segments or the different jobs to be done. And the entire business model canvas will be geared towards solving these customer jobs, helping them get these jobs done in a profitable and scalable way. So the lesson here is that it can be very interesting to segment customers not just based on who they are, but based on the jobs that they're trying to get done. Now let's finish this jobs concept just by looking at three different job types. Functional jobs, basically very technical, social jobs, and emotional jobs. Let's dig into this. Functional jobs entails getting a task done or solving a problem. This is very technical. So in wealth management, this might be, hey, I need somebody to manage my investable wealth. Social jobs, on the other hand, describe how a customer wants to be perceived by others. So in wealth management, I might say, hey, I want to show off my success, or I'd like to meet like-minded people. And then the third one is emotional jobs that describe how a customer wants to feel. And in wealth management, that might be, I want to sleep well at night. I don't want my money to be at risk. I want peace of mind. So we have three very different types of jobs. Now you'll learn a lot more about the jobs to be done concept when we study customer profiles later on when we talk about the value proposition canvas. Now let's look at a very different concept. Direct customers versus indirect customers, intermediaries. And to study this, we'll look at a simple example. We'll look at Nestlé, the biggest food company in the world, and we'll look at one of their yogurt brands. We're going to talk about LC1. Nestlé sells the yogurts to consumers, and they sell to consumers through an intermediary, through the retailers. Now, is the consumer their real customer? Well, it is their customer, but it's their end customer. The real customer, their direct customer, is actually the retailer. And they're reaching them through a sales force with a very specific value proposition, a value proposition to retailers. So in business models with intermediaries, you have two customer segments, and you need to create a specific value proposition for both. Now let's look at a different concept, customers in double-sided markets. And to study this, we're going to look at Google Search. Google attracts users by helping them find information for free. On the other hand, they attract advertisers by allowing them to reach a large audience and to sell to them through advertising. This is a very specific type of business model. It's a so-called double-sided market. Advertisers will only come to this platform if there are a lot of users. And users will only come to this platform if the search is for free, which is subsidized by advertisers. So we need advertisers to offer a free service. So you need both customer segments in order to make this business model work. This is a double-sided market that only works with two customer segments. And you might have more complicated multi-sided markets where you have several customers and several value propositions. Let's look at a second example. Apple iOS, their mobile platform. Smartphone users will come to Apple for the device, the design, the technology, and the applications. Application developers, the other side of this double-sided market, will come to the platform not just for the technology, but only if there are a lot of people. So application developers are attracted by the number of people on the iOS platform and their ability and willingness to pay. And smartphone users increasingly come to a phone not just for the technology, but for the number and quality of the applications. And a third example here, a very different one, is MasterCard, a credit card institution. Buyers will come to a platform if the credit card works, if it's easy to purchase, and if you can use it in a lot of stores around the world. And merchants will come for a very different value proposition if there's a large base of users that's willing to spend money. It's a double-sided market again. Merchants come for the number of buyers, and buyers come for the number of shops in which they can use the credit card. It's a double-sided market. Now let's look at business to business. A lot of people ask, well, is this the same for business to business customers? Does this apply as well? Well, it does, but we need to look at something specific here. In B2B, you'll likely be serving several customers within an organization, and you'll probably have to have distinct value propositions for these different groups and people inside an organization. This is how Microsoft offers MS Office through the cloud, and we're going to look at specifically at B2B sales. To study this, we're going to look at a concept from Steve Blank and Bob Dorff. They say when you sell to a company, you're going to have different customer and user types. The first type here is simply the users and the customers who use the service. In this case, it's the people who are going to use MS Office, specifically in the cloud. Then you need to consider the influencers who have some say in the purchasing decision, maybe not a formal influence, but they have some kind of power in the purchasing decision. And then you have the recommenders who have a more formal power, who can make or break a sale. Then you have the economic buyers. These are the people who have the budget, who invest the money for the purchase. And then finally, you have the decision maker who can really make or break a sales and who has the final decision-making power. And then there's a last group that we sometimes forget. It's the so-called saboteurs. These are people or organizations that could undermine the purchase even if they have no direct interest. So this is a very interesting way to look at the different customer and user types that you're addressing in a B2B sales. Let's finish here with some frequently asked questions. The first one is, well, why are free users, like we've seen in Google Search, a customer segment? Let's look at Google Search very briefly. Users, they have a choice. They can come to Google for search, or they can go somewhere else. So as soon as you have to attract customers with your value proposition, they are a customer segment. If they pay or if they don't pay isn't relevant. And in this case, it's very important because the number of users is the value proposition to the advertisers. Let's look at another question. can a key partner also be a customer segment? And to study this, we're going to look at Google Android. Google purchased Android in 2005 because they believed that more and more search would go to the mobile platform. Based on the Android platform, Android phones can be offered to smartphone users around the world. And today, they offer their own phones, but initially, they were only working with partners like Samsung, device manufacturers, who would manufacture these phones and offer them to smartphone users. But here's something very important. Samsung is also a customer segment because they have a choice. They have a choice if they will use Android or another operating system, in particular, going for their own operating system. So as soon as you have to attract a customer segment with your value proposition, it really is a customer segment. Let's stop here, and you'll learn a ton more about mapping out customer profiles and jobs when we go into the value proposition canvas later on in this course. In the meantime, ask yourself who you want to create value for and what jobs you're helping them get done. Class dismissed.